to tumble into one continuous hole. Her auburn hair, falling from its pins and combs, blazed like fire around her face, which was flushed with outrage, and she advanced. "Scoundrel!" she spat. "Rounder! Do you have any idea what I've been through because of you?" "Chloe," he said again, with hopeless goodwill. She took his measure with her eyes and plainly found him wanting. But she was a little calmer, it seemed to him. Or maybe she was merely winded by the mad rush from town. By some perverse twist of fate, he'd just come out of the Bloody Basin saloon when she stepped down from the afternoon stage, and he'd been as surprised to see Chloe Wakefield as she'd been to see him. He'd made up his mind to face her, try to make peace. But when he'd registered the look of shock and indignation on her face, he'd panicked instead, mounted up, and ridden back to the ranch like a mouse bolting for a hole in the wall. "If there was any justice in this world, you would have sprouted horns and cloven hooves by now," she burst out. Pink spots pulsed beneath her flawless cheekbones, and her lovely bosom rose and fell with the rapid, shallow rhythm of her breath. He waited. It was that or dive into the manure pile and try to bury himself. "Did you think I wouldn't find you someday?" she asked. And though her eyes were still snapping with conviction, her tone was softer than before. Was she settling down? He couldn't rightly guess, and didn't want to err on the side of optimism, which was his natural inclination. "I guess it never occurred to me that you'd come looking," he replied in all truth. He'd fled to Tombstone, stung by the discovery that half his father's life had been a lie, and therefore much of his own as well, and facing the probable loss of what he held most dear in all the world, the Triple M. By decree of the almighty Angus McKettrick, the ranch would go to the first of his 3 sons to marry and provide the old man with a grandchild, a contest his eldest brother Rafe had all but won by getting hitched to Emmeline. And now Cade was married too, and still in the running. His own prospects had seemed worse than dismal at the time. Who'd have thought they could get worse? Back then, Jeb's plan had been to carouse his troubles away, betting as many dancing girls as possible, playing as much poker as he could, and consuming copious amounts of whiskey. Instead, he'd encountered the lively Miss Wakefield right out of the chute, and things had promptly gotten out of hand. Oh yes, from the moment he'd collided with Chloe in front of a mercantile in Tombstone, chaos had been the order of the day. Hell, he'd have been better off at the OK Corral, siding with the Clantons and McLaurys against Doc Holliday and the Earps. At least then he'd have had a fighting chance. Was that the glimmer of tears he saw in her eyes? Please God, anything but that. For all of it, he'd rather be flayed alive than see her cry. "You and I are married," she said. She held up her left hand, his ring glinting in the crisp sunshine of that October afternoon. Fresh color flared in her face. "Or did that slip your mind?" He took off his hat, put it on again, this time with the brim drawn down to cast a shadow over his face. He'd been over this same terrain a dozen times, walking the landscape of his own conscience, raising all the unflattering arguments that could be made against him, and shooting each one down like a tin can tossed against the crisp autumn sky. And none of that had prepared him for this single, inevitable confrontation. The manure pile was beginning to look downright inviting. "Our getting married was a mistake," he said, in what he hoped was a reasonable tone of voice. For a moment he was back in Tombstone, a happy bridegroom of less than an hour, with a honeymoon ahead of him, being stopped in the street by a stranger, presented